Parents kicked me out of the apartment I rented from them to move my pregnant sister and her fiancé instead. 6 months later, they asked for help because I stopped paying rent. So instead of money, I sent them this letter from sister. My name is Tamara, and I had just turned 22 when I got my degree in business administration. Throughout my college years, I'd been fortunate enough to live in my grandmother's old apartment. Well, technically my father's now, since he inherited it after she passed away 3 years ago. I only had to cover the utility bills, which I managed by working part-time at Luigi's, an Italian restaurant just 2 blocks away. It wasn't always easy juggling work and studies. There were plenty of nights when I'd come home exhausted, feet aching from waiting tables, only to face hours of studying for exams or writing papers. But I made it work because that's what responsible adults do. The graduation dinner at my parents' house seemed perfect at first. Mom had outdone herself with the cooking, as usual. My younger sister Emily, 17 at the time, kept making jokes about how she'd miss having me help her with her homework. A handful of relatives came too, Aunt Sarah and Uncle Bob, my cousins Mike and Jenny, and my grandmother from my mom's side. They were all congratulating me and sharing stories about their own college days. But after the relatives left, everything changed. Mom cleared her throat in that way she always did before saying something uncomfortable, and my stomach instantly knotted up. I'd known that sound since childhood. It never meant anything good. "Tamara, honey," she started, her voice unusually formal. "Now that you've graduated, we need to discuss the apartment situation." I remember setting down my coffee cup slowly, trying to keep my hand steady. The ceramic made a soft clink against the saucer that seemed unusually loud in the suddenly quiet room. "What about it?" "Well, if you want to continue living there, you'll need to start paying rent." The words hit me like a bucket of cold water. On my graduation day, of all days. Dad sat there silently, suddenly very interested in his coffee cup, while Emily pretended to be absorbed in her phone, though I could see her watching the scene unfold from the corner of her eye. "I see," I managed to say, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for my water glass. Mom went on to explain the terms in her matter-of-fact way. The rent would be below market rate. A family discount, she called it with a tight smile, but still substantial. I did some quick mental math. I'd need a full-time job and fast. The part-time wages from Luigi's wouldn't cover this. "I understand," I said finally. Because what else could I say? They were right, in a way. I wasn't a student anymore. I was an adult, and adults paid their way in life. Still, the timing felt cruel. Like they couldn't even let me enjoy one day of celebration before bringing me back to reality. That night, lying in my bed at the apartment, I started searching for job openings nearby. The restaurant where I worked part-time couldn't offer me full-time hours. So I knew I needed something new, something more stable. As I scrolled through listings on my phone, I tried to focus on the practical aspects, rather than the hurt feelings bubbling beneath the surface. The next year flew by in a blur of work, rent payments, and adjusting to post-college life. I landed a decent job at a marketing firm near the apartment. Nothing glamorous, but I paid the bills and then some. I was hired as a junior account coordinator, and while the starting salary wasn't huge, it was enough to cover the rent my parents were charging plus utilities, with a little left over for savings. Every month I'd dutifully transfer the rent money to Mom's account, usually adding a little extra for utilities even though she never asked for it. I wanted to prove that I could handle adult responsibilities, that I was responsible and reliable. Maybe part of me was still trying to earn their approval, though I wouldn't admit that to myself at the time. Emily would stop by occasionally, usually when she needed help with college applications or wanted to raid my closet. She was in her senior year of high school, and I could see her changing, becoming more distant and secretive. Her visits became less about spending time with me and more about what she could get from me. Homework help, clothes, advice about boys. Emily had always been the baby of the family, used to getting her way. Mom and Dad spoiled her rotten, though I tried not to be bitter about it. They'd never made her get a part-time job like I had, never pushed her to be independent. She started dating Jason around this time. He was a year older than her, working part-time at the mall's electronics store. The first time she brought him to my apartment, I wasn't particularly impressed. He seemed nice enough, but there was something about him that set off warning bells. Maybe it was the way he talked about getting rich quick, or how he seemed to expect everyone to take care of him. Then came the phone call that would change everything. "Tomorrow, you need to come over right away." Mom's voice was tight with tension. "It's important." I assumed it would be about Emily's college plans. She'd been waffling between several schools, and I figured Mom wanted my input. Maybe they needed help with financial planning, or wanted to discuss scholarship options. Emily had decent grades, not spectacular like mine had been, but good enough to get into a state school. How wrong I was. When I arrived at my parents' house that evening, the atmosphere was strange. Mom and Dad sat rigidly on their usual spots on the couch, while Emily perched on the armchair, looking smug, That was the only word for it. Sit down, Tamara, Dad said, his voice gravelly. He looked older somehow, tired in a way I hadn't noticed before. I sat on the edge of the ottoman, my heart pounding. Whatever this was, it wasn't about college applications. Emily is pregnant, Mom announced without preamble. I sat there stunned, trying to process what I'd just heard. My 18-year-old sister was pregnant by her part-time mall employee boyfriend. I noticed Mom's hands twisting in her lap, a nervous habit she'd had since I was little. There's something else we need to discuss, Mom said, straightening her back and smoothing her skirt. Emily and Jason will need a place to live. They'll be moving into the apartment. I felt like I'd been slapped. The room started spinning slightly, and I had to grip the edge of the ottoman to steady myself. Excuse me? You'll need to move out, Mom stated matter-of-factly, as if she were telling me about the weather. Emily and Jason need somewhere to start their family. It's the perfect solution, really. The apartment is already furnished, it's in a good neighborhood, and it's close to Jason's parents. I looked at Emily, who was examining her freshly painted nails with a satisfied smirk. She didn't even have the decency to look uncomfortable about kicking her own sister out of her home. She was wearing my old sweater again, I noticed absently, the one she'd borrowed last month and never returned. Only time to find a new place, I managed to say, my head spinning. The thought of apartment hunting while working full-time made my stomach churn. A week should be enough. Oh, and tomorrow? Mom added, as if she'd almost forgotten something trivial. Like asking me to pick up milk on my way home. You'll still need to continue paying the rent. I actually laughed out loud, thinking it was a joke. The sound was harsh and unwelcome in the tense room. But when I saw their serious faces, my laugh died in my throat. You can't be serious. Your sister and Jason are young, Mom explained patiently, as if talking to a child. They don't have jobs yet, and with the baby coming she trailed off, gesturing vaguely at Emily's still flat stomach. So let me get this straight, I interrupted, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. You want me to move out and continue paying rent for an apartment I won't be living in? For them? They need our help, Tamara, Dad said sternly, finally meeting my eyes. It's your responsibility as the older sister. Family helps family. My responsibility? I stood up, my hands shaking with anger now. If they're mature enough to have a baby, they're mature enough to get jobs and support themselves. Has either of them even looked for full-time work? How can you be so selfish? Emily suddenly piped up, her eyes filling with dramatic tears. I'd seen those same tears when she was 12 and wanted a new phone, or 14 and wasn't allowed to go to a party. I'm going to be a mother. Don't you care about your niece or nephew? You're being very ungrateful, Mom said coldly. After everything we've done for you, ungrateful? I've been paying rent for the past year. I've been working since college, and now you want me to support two perfectly capable adults who got themselves into this situation? I'm not paying a single cent for them. If you want to enable this, that's your choice. But count me out. I walked out of that house with their shouts of ungrateful and selfish following me to my car. The front door slammed behind me with a finality that felt like the end of something fundamental. I didn't wait a week. That very night, I started packing my things, tears streaming down my face as I sorted through 4 years of memories. Fortunately, I had some savings. All those extra hours at work were finally going to pay off. I'd been putting aside money for a rainy day, and apparently the storm had arrived. I found a small studio apartment across town and signed the lease the next day. It wasn't as nice as my old place. The kitchen was tiny, the bathroom needed updating, and the commute to work would be longer, but it was mine. As I packed, I made detailed lists of everything in the apartment, categorizing items by who had paid for them. The furniture my parents had provided stayed behind, the old couch from their basement, the dining table that had been my grandmother's, the bookshelf Dad had assembled when I first moved in. But the books that filled it, the clothes in the closet, and the kitchen items I'd purchased myself went into boxes marked with my name. My coffee maker, a splurge after my first bonus at work, my laptop, bought with 3 months of saved tips from Luigi's, my bed, purchased piece by piece, frame, mattress, bedding, over my first 6 months of full-time work. All the things I'd worked hard to buy went into boxes and straight to my new place. It took me 2 days to move everything. My boss was understanding when I asked for a personal day, though I didn't explain the full situation. When I was done, I drove past my parents' house and slipped the apartment key under their door. I didn't leave a note. What was there to say that hadn't already been said? A week later, my phone exploded with notifications. Mom was calling, her voice shrill with rage. "What have you done to the apartment?" she demanded. "It's empty. Everything that was there when I moved in is still there," I replied calmly, focusing on keeping my voice steady. "I only took my own. I bought those things with my own money. Money I earned working while going to college. Maybe Emily and Jason can try doing the same. You selfish little. The string of expletives that followed would have made a sailor blush. I'd never heard my mother use such language before. I hung up before she could finish. That night, sitting on my mattress in my new apartment, I cried for the first time since this whole mess started. I cried for the family I thought I had, for the sister who turned into a stranger, for the parents who'd chosen to enable her instead of supporting me. But most of all, I cried for myself, for the naive girl who thought that working hard and doing the right thing would be enough. It's amazing how quickly life can change. In just 1 year, I went from being the good daughter to the family outcast. I threw myself into my work with an intensity that surprised even me. My boss, Sarah, noticed my dedication and started giving me more responsibilities. When a major client needed someone to handle their social media crisis at 2 a.m., I volunteered. When the office needed someone to come in on weekends to prepare for a big pitch, I was there. Work became my sanctuary, the one place where effort and merit actually meant something. Soon, I was leading my own projects. The promotion came with a nice raise, enough that I could start looking for a better apartment. My tiny studio didn't feel so cramped anymore, but I had begun to dream bigger. I opened a savings account specifically for a down payment on my own place someday. No more renting from family or anyone else. Through mutual friends and social media, I heard bits and pieces about my family. Emily had given birth to a boy, my nephew, though I'd never met him. There were plenty of pictures posted online. A tiny face wrapped in a blue blanket, pudgy hands reaching for the camera. First smiles captured and shared with the world. Emily and Jason, still just engaged, playing house in my old apartment, while my parents footed all their bills. Then one day, out of nowhere, an email popped up in my inbox from Emily. My heart actually skipped a beat when I saw her name. "Hey sis," it read, as if the past year had never happened, as if she hadn't participated in kicking me out of my home. "Hope you're doing well. I heard you got a promotion, congratulations. I'd love for you to come visit and meet your nephew. He's such a precious little angel, and I know you'd love him. Plus, I've heard you're doing really well financially now." I should have known there was a catch. There always was with Emily. The next email arrived before I could even process the first one. A list. Not just any list, a wish list of baby items that made my credit card weep just looking at it. Designer clothes that cost more than my first month's rent. A stroller that cost more than my laptop. Premium toys that probably cost more than what Jason made in a month at his part-time job, assuming he even still had it. I sat there staring at my screen, wondering if this was some kind of joke. After everything that had happened, after a year of no contact, this was how she chose to reach out? Not with an apology, not with any acknowledgement of what she'd done, but with a shopping list. "Are you working yet?" I wrote back, ignoring her list completely. The question was pointed, deliberate. Her response came quickly. "Oh, Mom and Dad are taking care of everything. They pay all the bills and give us spending money. Jason and I don't need to work right now. We're focusing on being parents. It's such an important job, you know?" Then came the kicker. "Actually, we're thinking of having more kids soon. Mom and Dad are such suckers. I mean, they're so supportive. They'll have to keep helping us if we have more babies. And we want a big wedding too, nothing cheap. Those old fools will pay for everything." I read Emily's email 3 times, each time feeling more disgusted than the last. My little sister had turned into someone I didn't recognize. Someone who called our parents old fools while happily taking their money. Someone who was planning to have more children just to keep the gravy train running. I didn't reply. What could I say? "Congratulations on being a manipulative mooch. How's the professional gold digging working out for you?" Instead, I closed my laptop and tried to forget about it. But the words kept echoing in my head, "Those old fools will pay for everything." But fate had other plans. A few months later, my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in over a year, Mom's. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Tamara," she said, her voice different somehow, tired, defeated. "We need to talk. Can you come over?" Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe some part of me still hoped for reconciliation. Whatever the reason, I found myself driving to my parents' house that evening. The familiar streets felt strange now, like visiting a place you've only seen in dreams. They looked older than I remembered. Dad's hair had more gray, and Mom's face showed new wrinkles. Dark circles under their eyes spoke of long hours and sleepless nights. They sat on their familiar couch, but something about their posture spoke of defeat. "We've been taking extra shifts," Dad said without preamble, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Working overtime to help your sister and Jason?" I waited, saying nothing. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence. "We know you're doing well at your job," Mom continued, and I felt my heart sink. This wasn't going to be an apology. This was going to be another demand. "We think it's time you helped support your sister too." I couldn't help it. I laughed. A real, genuine laugh of pure disbelief. The sound bounced off the walls of the too quiet house. You want me to what? Your sister can't work right now, Mom insisted, leaning forward. She has the baby to take care of. It's a full-time job. What about Jason? He needs to help with the baby too. I looked at them, these people who had raised me, who had taught me about responsibility and hard work, who had pushed me to get good grades and work part-time through college. Now they sat here, making excuses for two capable adults who refused to support themselves. Let me get this straight, I said slowly, carefully enunciating each word. You're working extra shifts to support my sister and her fiancé, who are both perfectly capable of working but choose not to. And now you want me to help enable their laziness too? Dad's face turned red. You're being selfish and greedy. If you don't help support your sister, consider yourself disowned. You can't disown someone who's already gone, I said quietly, and walked out of their house for what I hoped would be the last time. The sound of the door closing behind me felt like the period at the end of a very long sentence. When I got home that night, my apartment felt like a sanctuary. I kicked off my shoes, made myself a cup of tea, and sat down at my computer. My hands were steady as I opened my email and found Emily's message from months ago, the one where she bragged about manipulating our parents, called them old fools, and outlined her plan to avoid work by having more children. I stared at it for a long moment, my cursor hovering over the forward button. Part of me felt like I was betraying a confidence, but then I remembered, Emily had betrayed our parents' trust long before this. Without adding any message or explanation, I forwarded the email to Mom. Sometimes the raw truth is more powerful than any commentary. Mom didn't respond, but a week later, my phone rang. It was Aunt Sarah, Mom's sister, who had always been the family's unofficial news channel. You won't believe what happened, she said, her voice thick with family gossip. I could picture her sitting in her kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, probably still in her nursing scrubs after her hospital shift. Your parents kicked Emily out of the apartment. I nearly dropped my coffee. What? Apparently there was a huge fight. Your mom found out Emily's been mocking them behind their backs, planning to take advantage of them. They told her and Jason to get out and that they weren't giving them any more money. I listened as Aunt Sarah detailed the explosive confrontation, how Emily had screamed and cried, pulling out all her usual dramatic tactics, how Jason had stood there uselessly, looking like a deer in headlights, how Dad had finally put his foot down and told them they had 3 days to leave. According to Aunt Sarah, Mom had been eerily calm, simply saying, "We've been played for fools long enough." After I hung up, I wasn't surprised when my phone lit up with Emily's number. I could predict the conversation before it even started. Tamara. Her voice was thick with tears, the same fake crying she'd used since we were kids. Can we stay with you? Just until we figure things out? Please, we have nowhere else to go. No, I said firmly, surprised by how easy it was to say that single word. You're just like Mom and Dad, she screamed. You're all so selfish, we're family. Family doesn't exploit family, I said quietly, and hung up before she could argue. Later, I heard through the family grapevine that Emily, Jason, and the baby had moved in with his parents. Apparently, his mother was a strict, no-nonsense woman, who believed in tough love and responsibility. The kind of parent who didn't tolerate freeloading or manipulation. According to Aunt Sarah, Emily was miserable. Her mother-in-law made her follow a strict schedule, help with housework, and actually parent her child instead of passing him off to others. She had to do laundry, cook meals, and contribute to the household. Emily spent her days crying about how unfair it all was, how nobody understood how hard her life was. Life has a way of coming full circle. A few weeks ago, on my birthday, I was celebrating with friends at my apartment, not the tiny studio anymore, but a nice 2-bedroom place I'd bought with my savings and good credit. I'd invited a small group over for dinner and drinks, nothing fancy, just good food and better company. The doorbell rang during dessert, and a courier handed me a package. The return address made my heart skip a beat. It was from my parents. Inside was a silver photo frame, elegant but not flashy. I recognized it immediately. It was the kind of thing I'd admired once in passing during a shopping trip with Mom years ago. I'd been looking for something to display my college diploma, and had commented on how beautiful it was. But the price had been way out of my budget at the time. With it was a card. "We're sorry, we miss you. When you're ready, we'd like to talk." The handwriting was Mom's, but Dad had signed it too. No demands, no guilt trips, just 9 simple words. I set the frame on my coffee table and stared at it for a long time. My friends asked if I was okay, and I honestly didn't know how to answer. How do you explain that a silver frame could feel like both an olive branch and a weapon? That was 2 weeks ago. The frame is still on my coffee table and the card is pinned to my refrigerator. I see them every day, reminders of what I've lost and what might still be salvaged. I haven't called them yet. The hurt is still there, a dull ache that flares up when I think about everything that happened. I hear bits and pieces about Emily from relatives. She's still living with Jason's parents, still complaining about having to do chores and follow rules. Her mother-in-law makes her help with cooking and cleaning, and insists that Jason keep his full-time job at a local warehouse. They have to contribute to household expenses and save money if they ever want to move out on their own. Part of me hopes this experience will help Emily grow up, will teach her the values our parents failed to instill. Maybe someday she'll understand that love doesn't mean enabling bad behavior, and that being family doesn't mean being a doormat. Maybe she'll learn that respect has to be earned, not demanded, and that responsibility comes before privileges. As for me, I'm doing well, my career is thriving. I just got another promotion, and I'm managing my own team now. I have good friends who understand boundaries and respect independence. I'm learning to set healthy limits in all my relationships, personal and professional. Sometimes I miss the family I thought I had, but I'm starting to accept that it was never really what I imagined it to be. The silver frame sits on my coffee table, both a reminder of what I've lost, and a possibility of what might be rebuilt someday when I'm ready, when the hurt has faded enough for forgiveness to take root. When I can look at my parents without seeing the people who chose to enable my sister's worst behavior over supporting my independence. But for now, I'm focusing on my own life, my own growth, my own journey. My apartment is slowly becoming a home, filled with things I've chosen and earned. I'm planning a vacation for next month, my first real one since college. I'm thinking about getting a dog. Small steps toward building the life I want, not the one others tried to force me into.